Oh, got a hottie.
Whee!
Oh, and a nice glass of red wine.
Look how much is in it.
That's all right. Look at the size of mine.
I can't see. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
See?
I've got
Gone are the days when I would have had a whole bottle by now, you know?
Oh, there we are. Jolly good, James. A fishbowl full. I need you. I'm surprised you didn't need that to get through the film, to be honest.
Well, it is. To be fair, I was just going to hold out. I know, don't spoil it till we get going. But my final comment just says 90 minutes of my life that I won't get back.
Did someone suggest this film?
Yes.
Yeah, people were like saying, "Oh, well, you said you was going to do this. Could you please do this one?" And you know it's going to be a crap one if people want you to do it. And loads of people got very excited when I said we was doing it.
Yeah.
And,
I think that I'm going to mention at some point that these people should be banned from listening to the podcast.
Britain, an ancient kingdom with legends of violence, cruelty, and torment in its blood. Join your hosts, Ross, John, and James, as they bravely tread where few would dare. Witness their journey into the horrific history of British horror. They are the General Witchfinders.
Here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, goblins and ghouls, welcome back to the 31st episode of the General Witchfinders podcast. I'm James in Bournemouth in southern England.
Oh, I'm John Poutney. I'm still in South Wales, which is still in the south of Wales.
I'm Ross in Dorchester in southern England. And this time we bring you the legend of the seven gold vampires.
From Warner Brothers, who crashed the action barrier with Enter the Dragon, comes a new dimension in black belt thrills. As Hammer, masters of horror, and the Shaw Brothers, masters of kung fu, join forces to create the first martial arts horror spectacular ever filmed.
The whispered word is vampire. The horror is real and very close. What you must understand is that they are already dead. I'll fall before them, and you too will be eternally damned.
The Legend of the Seven Golden Vampires. Starring Peter Cushing and Julie Edge. Filmed entirely on location in Hong Kong. And co-starring David Chiang, a new Kung Fu champion in the Black Belt Hall of Fame.
Strike at their heart!
My brothers cannot survive another attack, Professor.
We've destroyed half their number. We know these creatures can die. Don't give up now.
It's a fight to the death against the sevenfold forces of evil. as Hammer and the Shaw Brothers together create the first martial arts horror spectacular ever filmed.
The martial arts horror film, The Legend of the Seven Golden Vampires, was released in 1974. It stars Peter Cushing as Professor Van Helsing, Christopher Lee, oh no, hang on a minute, actually John Forbes-Robertson as Count Dracula. And Ross has put not the son of Johnston Forbes-Robertson, but apparently he did play Mr. Badger in 2 episodes of the BBC's seminal Jonny Briggs.
Dracula or
Dracula, not Johnston Forbes-Robertson.
Oh, who's Johnston Forbes-Robertson?
I don't know. Apparently, the Wikipedia made a point that it wasn't his son.
All right, jolly good.
All right, okay, fine. Okay, Robin Stewart as Leyland Van Helsing, who apparently appeared in 29 episodes of less than middling soap, Sons and Daughters. The sort of thing that you would watch if you were homesick from school
when you're off
in the 1980s.
Sons and daughters of thee, and laughter and
tales of sadness and happiness.
Was it Australian?
I think so.
Yeah. Was it in the war? Like this?
That was the Sullivans.
That was the Sullivans. That was good. Oh my god, I'm still traumatized by the episode of the Sullivans that's set in the train. Or am I confusing that with something? I'm confusing that with something else.
Was Mrs. Mangle in the Sullivans?
Yeah, she was.
Yeah, I thought so. Yeah. Okay,
so
we're already diverted.
and for the best, let's say.
Yes.
Julie Egay as Vanessa Buren, and Ross has noted that she was the 1962 Miss Norway.
Yeah.
And competed in the Miss Universe pageant, and she was awarded the title "The New Sex Symbol of the 70s" by the head of Hammer Film Studios, Sir James Carreras.
Oh, no.
I wonder why. Hammer featured her as a not-so-glamorous prehistoric woman in the Creatures the World Forgot from 1971.
Oh.
The film was a flop, just like this. But Julie went on a round-the-world publicity tour and became a leading pin-up model, apparently. She lived for 6 years in the 1970s with Tony Bramwell, former assistant to the Beatles, and later a successful record and film music promoter. The next door neighbor was Brian May, astrologer, badger protector, and a guitarist of the
Badger.
No, I'm sorry. I must apologise. He's not astrologer. He's an astronomer.
Yes.
Dreadful.
He might be an astrologer as well, but
he might be keeping it quiet with Anita Dobson. Right. But to date, she is the only Norwegian James Bond girl, and she appeared on Her Majesty's Secret Service. And then Ross has got less facts about the supporting cast because he's just put Shen Chan as Car, David Chiang as fuck, I'm fucked up already. David Chiang as Ching, and Susie as Mei Kwei. All of them apparently stars of innumerable Asian movies. Ross, that is very I didn't do my homework. As a man who marks a lot of homework, can I just say, just putting innumerable Asian movies, that does not sound like...
list loads of them off, but no one would recognise them. Unless you're like an aficionado of the 1,000 films which the Shaw brothers made.
The pranks out, absolutely.
Oh, really?
They made over 1,000 films. At one time, they were the biggest independent studio in the world.
Yeah. Did all the early Bruce Lee movies.
Watching this film, it's definitely quantity over quality with these guys, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. So the film began development due to Don Houghton's father-in-law knowing Hong Kong film producer Run Shaw, who, fact fans, also was one of the producers on one of my favourite films of all time, Blade Runner.
No way.
Yes. He's one of the producers of Blade Runner.
From the ridiculous to the sublime.
Houghton flew to Hong Kong to discuss a project with Run and his brother Run Mi, who agreed to finance 50% of the film. It was shot between October the 22nd and October the 23rd. No, I'm sorry. October the 22nd and December the 11th, 1973 at the Shaw Brothers Studios in Hong Kong. The Shaw Brothers were not happy with how Roy Ward Baker, director of Dr. Jekyll and Sister Hyde, Scars of Dracula, The Vampire Lovers, and A Night to Remember,
Titanic disaster biopic.
Yeah.
So they weren't happy with how he was directing the film, and they had martial arts sequences choreographed by one of their studio directors, Chiang, uncredited. These additional scenes that led to the Eastern version of the film run at about 110 minutes.
Oh, Christ.
Jesus wept. 20 minutes longer than the UK version. Maybe they took some of the plot with them.
Yeah.
Is it Renee Glenay? Or Glennie?
Renee.
Okay, so Renee Glenay, who was the continuity supervisor for the film, stated that working with the Shaw brothers was a big experience due to language differences, and the director Roy Ward Baker was constantly screaming at the Chinese actors to stop spitting on set. In an interview in the late 1990s, Baker described the shooting of this film as a nightmare. He discovered that Hong Kong films were made silent and looped in post-production, of course.
Whoa!
And etc. and sound effects such as that, due to the constant noise of traffic in Hong Kong and aircraft. He lamented that Peter Cushing was practically catatonic on set. And we all know why, dear listener. If you've listened to a couple of these, you know why he was catatonic on set in the 70s, having recently been widowed, but still wanting to do the film to give him something to do. On its release in the United States, the film was further truncated by another 20 minutes, retitled The Seven Brothers Meet Dracula, which makes no sense whatsoever, and loops several remaining scenes to fill the runtime. And is that part of the slow-mo sequences as well, do you think?
Yeah, but also the bit they cut out was all the bits with Dracula in. So
wow.
Why it was called The Seven Brothers Meet Dracula and then they removed Dracula altogether. Makes no sense.
This, in all territories, the film was a financial failure. This is the only Hammer Dracula movie not to feature Count Dracula's name in the title. Forbes-Robertson, longtime stand-in for Big Chris Lee. Apparently, he was considered to fill the cape in Scars of Dracula before Lee was persuaded to return by a big suitcase full of money, no doubt, was furious when he discovered that he had been dubbed by David Decatur.
Oh, he's dubbed, is he?
Lee tried to talk Peter Cushing into not doing the project. That's a first. Yeah. Whereas he considered it below an actor of Cushing's caliber. Lee told Cushing that Ralph Bates was willing to step in and do the film naked. No, sorry, that's me just adding that in. Because of Women in Love and him wrestling him. What's his name? Oliver Reed, thank you. If Cushing wanted to back out, but Cushing replied that he thought that... Yes. Oh, shit, sorry. Too many Bates.
I did wonder where you were going with that then, James.
and then he went and wrote The Darling Buds of May. Oh, no, wait, sorry. That's G Bates. Sorry. Right, but Cushing replied that he thought the change of scenery might help his ongoing grief-induced depression. Listener Marty, who is Marty Ross Writer at the soon-to-be-dead Twitter, points out that there is an audio version narrated by Peter Cushing that was released as an LP.
I gazed about the dreadful place. I saw the cauldron and the 7 slabs of stone. I thought the nightmare was ended, and yet a cold draught of air rushed its way through the temple. And then the very walls of the place vibrated with the sound of a giant gong. I turned and saw the shrouded outline of Ka, high priest of the temple. And as I watched, he stretched out a hand to me. On the index finger was the ring of Count Dracula. Ka's face seemed to dissolve in an oozing cloud of venom. The oriental features disappeared, and in their place was the lean, gaunt face of the arch-vampire. Almost majestically, he walked towards me, fixing me with his hypnotic gaze. His lips parted, the long, sharp fangs emerged. And then he stopped, his brow creased into a frown of fury. The first watery glimmer of dawn was cutting through the acrid dust of the temple. I took advantage of this distraction and launched myself at him. He flung me aside as though I were a floating leaf in the wind. My body crashed against the gong. As I fell, my trembling fingers touched the wooden shafted hammer that was used to strike it. Dracula moved towards me, carefully skirting the pools of light that were now appearing on the floor of the temple. His hands reached for my throat as I smashed the shaft of the hammer in two. It left me with a wooden stake, sharp and jagged at one end. As he leaned over me, I stabbed at his chest with all the strength I possessed. The sharp point entered his body. A velvet red blossom of blood fountained up from the wound. He tugged at the offending stake, and I thought for one ghastly moment he would wrench it free. But as he stepped back, his foot fell into a vivid pool of clear morning sunlight. And his whole body became engulfed in a cloud of smoke and fire.
Nice. And listener Christopher, who is Arthurianism on soon-to-be-dead Twitter, but hello as well, also tweeted to point out that the line, "Look on me and remember," were delivered by Cushing's Van Helsing in Dracula AD 1972. Nice.
And Spock in what was
Remember.
it?
That's just Remember Us in Wrath of Khan.
Yeah.
We watched it recently. And then listener Mal, hello Mal.
Out of danger.
Out of danger. Yes. That's just it. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. Or the one. Yeah. It's brilliant. Anyway, sorry. Listener Mal, who's don't get me going. Brilliant. Of all the life forms I've encountered, his was the most human.
Just the final insult as they shove him out the
amazing.
So,
God. Right,
I considered having a torpedo as my coffin until the thing in Ready Number One, the guy in the Ready Number One had it. So
yeah, fair enough.
What happens in that?
Okay,
Ready Player One. Sorry, Ready Player One.
Yeah.
There's the one of the people in there has the
Spock's torpedo. What happens to him?
He just has that as his coffin.
Oh, okay.
Anyway.
I thought you were going to say he was buried alive or something, or he exploded.
No, but I just felt like, I thought it would be an original thought by me to have it, but then someone else did it. And it was like,
An original thought from a major, incredibly famous 40-year-old sci-fi franchise.
Yeah, this is all being cut out.
Anyway,
definitely now.
So, and listener Mal, who is on Twitter at Mal3Gordon, recommends a contemporary BBC documentary called Fists of Fire, which features some behind-the-scenes footage and an interview with Chiang. So there you go, which I'm assuming is available on YouTube.
It's on YouTube, yeah.
Are any of these listeners mentioned responsible for making us watch this aberration?
One of them might be, but I'm not going to name them. So I don't want to give them too much grief.
Okay. Right. So somehow I've managed to get 3 pages of notes.
Yeah, I got 3 pages, but they're small pages.
Yeah.
I think I should say now, before we start, in our last episode, dear listener, we kind of divulged what our least favourite films of all were. Is that true, Cleves?
Yes, we did.
You did a funny face then.
Yeah, but I was trying to remember what it was.
I can't remember what it was. But that's fine, because this is now my least favourite film
of all time.
Of all time that we've done for this podcast, and probably of all time.
So you've avoided this one for quite a long time.
I've avoided this film for over 30 years.
Wow.
As not being, in my mind, canonical with the other Hammer films. And I think you can also see the visible death throes of the British film industry until the late 1990s, really, can't you? It's just mad. I was watching Hell Drivers the other day on Talking Pictures, which is a B movie with Stanley Baker, William Hartnell, Herbert Lom, Sean Connery, Sid James. Amazing cast. It was a B movie. It's a brilliant film. And then you look at something like this and you just think, what on earth was going on?
It's just such a major cash in on every element, isn't it? So what is
I think
popular?
Just in case for our younger listener, if they do exist, every now and then we like to think, it's one for the teenagers. Yeah. But I think we need to just point out, just in case people know, that there was off the back of Bruce Lee, there was a huge boom in sort of kung fu and martial arts in the 70s in Great Britain. And to this day, sort of magazines such as Combat and things like that, which was like really cheaply made, black and white, no color images. Yeah. But, up until, the death of the magazine industry, really, up until the 1990s, it was still like a really big draw. Yeah. And it was obviously watching it was like this film was made that like someone at Hammer's just gone, Kung Fu's popular. Let's do some sort of Kung Fu horror thing.
Shit in.
And then the Shaw Brothers going, we'll chuck half of the money in. Yeah. Can we just have some can we have some contractually obligated Kung Fu sequences?
And it's, all right. You look at what the Americans were doing in terms of like Rosemary's Baby, The Exorcist, which is around this time. Omen, which I think was 2 years later.
Oh,
and you just
man,
and you can see, universe. You can just see like where they're just going wrong, and it's like, could they see it? Could they manifest how wrong it was going, or
I think
were they not aware and they just thought, let's just keep going? I
think it was a case of they could tell from the returns from the box office. And I think it was just like grasping at anything that they could get. Do you remember there was a Spider-Man film which was they brought out, which had a massive sort of kung fu
something the dragon is in the title, Ross.
I don't remember that. No,
but I think this is one of two Hammer Shaw Brothers co-productions they did. The other one, it's a film called Shatter, which is like a cult film. Have you seen that?
It's a thriller. That's on Talking Pictures quite often. I've recorded it. I've never made it past the first 10 minutes. It's a bit like this. It's incoherent.
Yeah.
There's just, we can go into this. How much detail do people want us to go into?
There's not a lot of detail. It's not, I think there's probably about 4 plot points in there. So the film starts off with an interminably long
opening
of a
And my first note is at the end it does say this film was shot entirely in Hong Kong, but it starts off with the caption Transylvania. And what I put is and I've been to Romania and I've been to Castle Dracula, and I just said that's not Transylvania, old Warren, at the start. And my God, it's just so not anything like Europe in any way, shape,
it just
or
looks
form.
incredibly sunny and hot for a start, doesn't it?
Yeah,
and kind of
like a long stumbling intro.
The intro is really boring. It's stupid. There's a terrible comp shot of like a castle on top of a hill, which is the castle kind of moving and floating of its own accord and looks a totally different color to what's around it. The dubbing
like in
is
a
very
16-bit
strange
video game.
Yeah, you can tell immediately it's all ADR, can't you?
None of it feels very Hammer at all. But then the music comes in, which is James Bernard or Bernard. I'm never sure how you pronounce it. So it starts to feel like, from the beginning, for me, it feels like a very weird thing done for like children in need when they'll do like, like Doctor Who visits Albert Square or, so it'll be this weird clash of like things that you don't necessarily want to clash. So anyway, a Chinese man is climbing up a hill, isn't he? In Transylvania.
He's making his way to
scares the Transylvanian.
He scares the one Transylvanian that we see in the film. He's not credited, I don't think. He's got a very strange hat on. Then he finds his way into Castle Dracula.
Which is all lit with green and red lights.
Which is lit like a kind of disco in Guernsey in 1999 that I went to.
What sort of music were they playing, John? Was it like generic pop, or was it?
I would have said it was My Chico Latino by Jerry Halliwell.
Wow, that's a
I would have said it was What I Am by Emma Bunton.
Oh, Spice Girls solo careers, plenty.
I would have hoped for something like Sing It Back by Moloko, but I don't think that was involved. I would say hand on heart, and I'm willing to die for this, that the best summer of pop music ever was the summer of 1999. And that's not just because I was at my peak age of 21. Go back and look at it. There's some
interesting
absolute bangers released in that year. Ricky Martin.
Living a Vida Loca. Amazing, of course, right?
Mambo number 5. Flat Eric.
Mr. Wazoo.
So the top seller of that year was Baby One More Time, Britney Spears, which obviously I'm not that fussed about. But you also had some great stuff. Living La Vida Loca.
Mm-hmm. Of course.
That don't impress me much. Sweet Like Chocolate.
Wow.
Flat Beat. Mr. Uzo.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know that one.
Mm-hmm.
What's that?
Yeah, you know that. It was on an
Ross.
advert, please.
For what?
It's the Levi's Flat
Eric.
Oh, with Flat Eric.
Yeah.
We've got Perfect Moment. Martine McCutcheon.
This is
my
one and only
moment. Boom, 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 Boom. Venga Boys.
Did anyone else record that Martine McCutcheon song? Or was that a cover?
No.
No,
maybe you did, Chris.
Oh, I sing it quite a lot, but not realising it was a Martin McCutcheon
This is
song.
my moment. No Scrubs, TLC.
Oh, huge.
Tender by Blur.
Oh, yes.
Sunscreen, Baz Luhrmann.
I can remember going to buy Tender and playing it in our little room at college.
Yeah. I think I remember that as well. King of My Castle, Wham Do Project.
Oh, yes.
I don't know.
There's some absolute bang. Wild West.
Yeah.
By Will Smith.
Will Smith.
Maria by Blondie Cleaves when we went to see them.
Yeah, good job.
So it was a great. There's a lot that's not on this list because these are the biggest sellers. But Beautiful Stranger by Madonna.
Yeah,
great.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
and as we know, that was Blondie's only number 1.
It was
Maria
in this country.
Yeah,
they've had like 5 number 1s in the UK.
I'm sure we talked about this previously.
No,
not on this podcast.
Yes, we have.
No.
Anyway,
they've had loads of number 1s.
Yeah.
Atomic.
Okay. Well, we're gonna have to look. I'm probably gonna break the computer looking at this.
Right. Let's get on with this fucking vampire.
Yeah.
James, what were you going to say? But
no. Just my message very, very quickly is that Spotify released a thing saying, based on our streaming service, here is from each year since 1955. Here is the most popular record with Spotify listeners from that year. And you can go through the 1950s. It's things like Johnny Be Good and things like that, Heartbreak Hotel. And you just go, yep. And then you go through the 60s. Like, yes, I know all of those songs. All the way through the 70s. Yes, I know all of those songs. All the way to the 80s, 90s. And then they're like the noughties. You go, yep. And then I get to 2010. I'm like, I've got no idea what any of these fucking records
That's
are.
exactly what I did as well, James.
That's the point where I'm old.
Yeah.
I just don't
It's
care
all
anymore.
like Dipstick featuring Rotten Dog or like Pussy Mama feat Broken Finger jive.
Ed Sheeran. No chorus or something like
Ed
that.
Sheeran
What was that?
featuring everyone.
I'm aware of someone called Lewis Capaldi, but I've got no idea what he does.
He's Doctor Who's son for a start.
Is he?
He's Peter Capaldi's son.
Is he?
It's not his son, but they are related. They are related.
No, it's his son, isn't it?
It's not his son. No, they're like cousins, I think. Because I
swear to God, it's his son. Peter Capaldi is actually his second cousin once removed.
Oh.
I thought that Peter Capaldi was his actual father. I'm really disappointed.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, but they are related. Because again, there's so many Capaldis.
David Tennant's son's in the new Game of Thrones, isn't he? He's
really?
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a picture of him today from the London convention like stood over the back of him saying, "Oh, he's not that special," or holding up a sign saying he's not that special.
But he does. The reason he does that is because Peter Davison does that to him when he's at the convention.
Oh, thank you for explaining that.
Yeah.
Terrible bats. So bats that don't flap.
Yes. So we get the return of the bats from Scars of Dracula. Yeah.
Yes. Stupid makeup and Christopher Lee's wig.
Yeah.
Hold on, because he goes to the Chinese gentleman goes to Dracula's coffin once again, as before, in so many, handily says Dracula on it, or D, doesn't it?
Prostrates himself.
Lo and behold, and I've went to put down enter Big Chris Lee. But then what I've put is, now this is what happens when you order Big Chris Lee off of Wish. you get, I was like, wait a minute, that's not Christopher Lee. Oh. And then, as you said, Ross, this is somebody else with unbelievable makeup.
Yeah,
it's like when small kids play around with makeup, isn't it? Like his lipstick is ridiculous.
Although there's two elements of this I did enjoy. The way he came up out of the coffin like Nosferatu.
Well, he does the Nosferatu thing, but they cut away from that bizarrely, don't they?
Yeah.
And then he kind of glides down the steps in a way that is very...
It's like, but I was thinking both of those things were done in Bram Stoker's Dracula by Francis Ford Coppola, wasn't they? The way he took Harker off of the carriage and everything. And I was wondering, was this one of the films that Francis Ford Coppola watched in order to...
I think so.
Yeah. But it was,
I think so.
I thought those two bits, I was like, awful makeup. I quite like those little touches.
The makeup is unforgivable and it's just...
I was trying to work out if it was kind of like Chinese opera style makeup or something. I don't know.
It looks totally theatrical, doesn't it? It looks like a Victoriana kind of... it's just awful.
But you can see why that guy was pissed off. He finally gets to be Dracula on screen. They put awful makeup on him and they dub his voice. And then cut him out of it when he's in America.
And then he's only in 2 scenes anyway. It's pathetic. Right.
But apparently Dracula said he's confined to Castle Dracula.
Yes.
Why?
Cleves, with a film like this, we can't reason with any of the plot lines at all, can we? They're talking to each other. The guy's talking a Mandarin. Christopher Lee, even though he's in Transylvania, is talking English, but they can still understand each other.
Yeah. I love the way you're still putting Christopher Lee, even though it isn't Christopher Lee.
It might as well be.
Yeah. It's Dracula, Christopher Lee, it's the same. I've got to say that.
This guy actually has more dialogue than Christopher Lee in Dracula, Prince of Darkness, where Christopher Lee has no dialogue at all.
Exactly, yeah. I've got to say, though, growing up, I used to get really frustrated when they showed pictures of Christopher Lee as Dracula. I was like, that's not Dracula. Bela Lugosi's Dracula. But since we'll be doing this podcast, there is now only one Dracula for me. So I think it's completely rewired my brain.
And what we then get, when he then gives it the whole, why have you come to see Dracula, etc., etc.
Yes.
And he says, I've walked so basically across half of the world's landmass. He walks to Transylvania to say, there were once 7 vampires that were, majestic or whatever he says, and they've virtually died out now. And I need your help, oh mighty Dracula. And I'm telling you right now, my reading of this line is way better than what you're actually getting. And I'm no actor. Trust me, I've had a go at it. I'm no actor. But my God.
All we can say is that the Chinese actors in this film aren't potentially professional actors, are they?
I think they're more kung fu performers.
Yes.
And he basically says, come. And what I've written down, and Ross, this might have to be a cut-out bit, I don't know, but what I put is Dracula will fix it for you. Instead of Jim will fix it for you. He's basically, dear Dracula, will you fix it for me to bring back the 7 golden vampires to Szechuan province?
Yeah.
And come on and allow my Cub Scout group. That's what I'm going to say, John. And allow my Cub Scout group to eat fast food on a roller coaster.
Drink milkshake.
Yeah. Or was it milkshake?
That's going to be
anyway. So yes, and then then Dracula says, yes, I will, but the deal is this.
Yeah.
I am going to take over your body and go and oversee this project myself.
It's quite insulting. I'm going to take your hideous form or something like that.
Well, that's Ross, I wrote this down.
Yeah.
And what I put is, he says, I need your miserable carcass. And what I put is Dracula's Tinder technique in some work.
I think that would work.
All I wrote.
That would work at 2 a.m. in Jumpin' Jacks, though, wouldn't it, John?
I think that would work in Jago's Cleats. All I've written down at this point is basically Dracula wants a holiday.
Yeah.
He does. He does.
Because it's just like,
and then,
I'm stuck here. I just, actually,
if I pretend to be an Asian,
I don't have to, if I go in your body, I could get out. And it's like, it's not explained why he's confined there. It's stupid. Yeah. It's very disappointing that this is a Don Houghton script, because there isn't really a script or a narrative at all, is there?
No.
So I was hoping there'd be something in it, but there is nothing.
No. And then he then says, right, I'm going to take you over. And then what I put is, he then stands on a turntable of doom. Mm-hmm. He just rotates very slowly, like he's in a microwave.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then he Dracula takes over his body.
But I do love a bit of coloured smoke.
Yes.
Coloured smoke's it's always a winner.
And of course it's colour smoke.
Yeah. I mean, it's a no expense spent transformation, isn't it?
That's right. And then what I put down is that Dracula's powers, their myriad powers, unfortunately, they don't extend to effective lip sync. Because the Chinese actors and the voiceover is so out.
Yeah.
It's not a little bit out. Even when he says Dracula in the voiceover, his mouth doesn't get anywhere close to Dracula.
It's like he's saying tarantula.
Yeah.
You do. Well, that's something I wanted to pull up, which is later on in the film, you basically have all of the hits of, it's a bit like a Star Wars film where you've got Leia's theme, Luke's theme, Han Solo's theme, but it's all just the scores from previous films that are kind of dubbed in.
Yeah.
Just to fill bits out at some point, where there's one bit later on where one of the vampires decomposes in the middle of a fight scene.
Yeah, for no reason.
And you have the kind of, you have the Death of Dracula music from a previous film, and it cuts away from the fight scene for like 20 minutes.
I think this is like, it was the cheapest film they could make from all the fag ends of anything they had laying and everything else. Please, Christopher, please be in it, Christopher.
Yeah, there's well, my fantasy for this is an amazing film idea for this would be based on a weekend where James Carreras, whoever it is, goes to Christopher Lee's house to try and convince him to be in this film.
Yeah,
and I think that would be an amazing film.
Yeah, sort of thing.
That'd be an amazing film.
To make. Do you remember when we pitched the time where Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing go to film the Horror Express and sleep in the same bed together?
Yes. Well, they did. We established that happened.
Yeah.
All I've put is problematic images of China.
Yeah, exactly.
Because there's a bit where someone chops a... What does it say, James?
I've just put COVID epicenter. Because it cuts to a wet market.
Yeah.
And as we all know...
Is that what it is?
I'm sorry. Yes, that's what it is, isn't it? Yes, where they're killing animals live there for you.
Is that what
it is? Yes, yeah.
Right, okay. That bit won't be in the podcast. But there is a bit where they chop...
It's true. That's what it is. It's
okay, but that man has got to pay £1 billion just for saying that Sandy Hook was a fraud. So I don't want to be sued.
Yeah. No.
Yes. Well, I'm not saying that that COVID started off in a wet market either. It's definitely not a bioweapon, as I once heard. Well, I'm no longer a member of this particular gym, but I was once in a gym. Wait for it. I was in a gym, and of course, right in a particular in a sauna, and I love a sauna, mate. And I was laying down, enjoying it, and there are two people coming in right at the start of COVID, like, what do you reckon all this is going on with COVID? And this one guy went, well, it's definitely a bioweapon made by China. Definitely a bioweapon. And the other person went, yeah, I totally agree with you. And I was like, I know, it's one of those times I really wanted to go, no, it's not. It's just not. That's not how these things, and they've been saying there's going to be one of these things for years. There was a BBC 4 documentary about it. with Alice Roberts, where she spoke about pandemics, and it's I can't be bothered. I've had a long day at work.
You should have just released your own bioweapon in the sauna as you left, James.
Well, that's what you would have done, Cleaver. But anyway, but I did think, I was like, cut to a wet market, and my immediate thought was COVID epicenter.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So there's a bit where they chop the head off a frog, and I think its depiction of Chinese people is very problematic for the Chinese market, probably, isn't it? Let's face it. And that's not a wet market.
I just thought it was just to show that whole kind of like taking of life and things such as that, wasn't it? You know, kind of we're now in that kind of environment.
I don't know if you're giving a lot of credit.
No, I think it's more. Aren't Chinese people weird? I think that's basically.
Yeah, okay, fine. and then it cuts to, and I put this was utterly ridiculous. You couldn't get away with this now. What I put is cut to Peter Cushing explaining Chinese history to Chinese people.
Yes.
It's like, fuck off, Peter. Imagine a China person saying,
incorporating vampires.
well, the whole thing about the history of England is you guys are always fucking killing each other, aren't you? Like, what?
Yeah, it's very odd. But it's a bit like, how can we shoehorn Peter Cushing into this scenario, isn't it? And at times in this film, I don't know what you two think, but I suspect greatly that he's wearing his costume from Dalek's invasion of 2150 AD.
Yes, I did.
That's a shout.
Yes, I was thinking this looks very Doctor-esque. Just needs a moustache.
When he's wearing the kind of terracotta coloured jacket, I was like, either this is a massive coincidence that they've gone for a similar outfit, or he's wearing the same jacket.
Yeah.
It looks really...
I was coveting that corduroy jacket. But yeah.
Again, Peter looks great in this film, doesn't he?
He's not quite as emancipated.
I thought we're getting up to
Sorry.
I thought we're getting up to the era. He looks exactly like Moff Tarkin from Star Wars. I thought we're really getting close to Moff Tarkin. He looks like Grand Moff Tarkin.
He hasn't got his slippers on, though, has he?
No, he has not. No. So
flashback.
We learn. Hold on, Ross. We learned that the whole point about this whole thing, we haven't given any context to this, is that we cut to Van Helsing in China, and Van Helsing has been asked by this Chinese university to talk about vampires. And Van Helsing says, well, there is a legend that there are these 7 vampires that terrorize the Chinese village, and here's a story about them. You know, kind of Scooby-Doo style.
Just to say though, they've asked him to come to. They've asked him to come to China to talk about this. He goes all the way there, which would have taken fucking weeks.
Forever.
Yeah. He starts telling them, and they start going, "Oh, this is rubbish," and they all leave.
They leave. They all walk out. Yeah. I think they're very rude young men.
Anyway.
But we then learn about what's and I. To start off with, I was like, is this happening now? Is this a cut to this? No, wait. This is all part of Van Helsing's narration. That, like, this is the original story of the 7 vampires. And it cuts to what the deal was. And what I've just put is naked or semi-naked Chinese ladies.
Yep.
Yeah.
And my next note is Ross will love this. Because bearing in mind that there aren't that many, in the films that we've watched, for General Witchfinder thus far, there aren't that many naked women. There's quite a lot of naked Chinese ladies.
Their tops just get... I think I'm being unjustly maligned here. I'm not the only person here who likes boobs. But yeah, but their tops do get ripped off very, very quickly, and also they are in that kind of weird torture S&M.
Yes, which, and I put that, it looks like they're all sort of tied down and going, and sort of shouting for their lives. And at their feet in the middle, so they're arranged in a circular... a circular configuration, and at their feet it looks like a massive thing of Tizer.
Yes,
which for our non-British listeners is a kind of like lemonade, or like a red lemonade knockoff, isn't it? That's the best way I think I could describe it. But it just looks like a big old load of Tizer, but it's supposed to be blood.
So basically, a father's gone.
I don't really know what's meant to be happening.
So a father's meant to be going to rescue his daughter, who's been taken by these 7 vampires to this like.
He's armed with like a
gardening implement.
It's just like a rake or something, isn't it?
Yeah.
And he's got a bit of a limp. and he has a limp, which is sometimes there, sometimes not.
Yeah.
Yeah, he does quite a shit job, let's face it, doesn't he?
Yeah.
But when he breaks into the house and to try and rescue his daughter, he manages to pull off one of the medallions off of the 7 golden vampires,
and it's quite a medallion.
Yeah, which is a ginormous metal bat. When he takes it off, it's like the vampire springs a leak and all this steam comes out of him, and then he disintegrates.
Not explained.
So the film is but the film is called The Legend of the 7 Golden Vampires. One of the 7 golden vampires is killed in a flashback at the beginning of the film. So there's only 6 golden vampires.
6.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Legend, Ross.
Yeah.
And then he deflates.
Yeah.
He kind of deflates, doesn't he? For some reason, he lets a load of gas out of his belly button.
Yeah. And then
it is bollocks.
And then he runs off. But then there's one bit which I think was actually...
and then he runs off.
We should also point out that the daughter that he's trying to save is murdered.
Yes.
Yeah. And then he legs it. That's why he...
then he himself has his throat cut. He's not the most heroic guy, is he?
Well, wait. Well, what happens is that he runs back to his village, and then the remaining golden vampires, like, oh, how dare you? And my point is, and this is the only thing which is like, oh, that's interesting. And then is that they then raise like this zombie army.
Yeah,
yes,
that's my favorite.
They're the
bit.
only things in this film that I like.
Yes.
It's quite a scare. I said it's like a David Lynch film because it goes in weirdly slow motion, and they all start coming. It's like David Lynch directed Thriller at this point. And it's quite scary. But the thing is,
that's doing it an awful lot of favors.
But that man's being chased by horses.
Yes,
and he's got a limp. And they don't.
That's what I'm saying. Sometimes he does. He just runs.
Yeah.
Sometimes Ross.
He manages
the music as those creatures are resurrected is very similar to music from Plague of the Zombies in a dream sequence in Plague of the Zombies.
Oh.
So I feel it might be another bit of copied and pasted
music,
incidental music from another film.
But
that I will agree that that's probably the best part of the film, isn't it?
In order to summon the zombies, the golden vampire or the guy who Dracula has taken over, but Dracula was he's Dracula for all intents and purposes. Is he hits a gong repeatedly, and my note is he's hitting that gong like a primary school kid on a chime bar. And we all remember that. Yeah. If you didn't have a go on a chime bar when you were a kid, dear listener, I do feel sorry for you. That's what they would have gave kids like me with no musical talent whatsoever. And it's like, dang, 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 just over and over. And that's just goes mad. And that's what it happens twice in the film, that when he hits the big gong, that's what brings up the zombie army.
The undead army.
Then put at various points that the zombies are skipping.
Yeah, well, it's hopping because
hopping,
Asian vampires hop.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, they do.
Of course.
Is that true?
Yeah, it's true.
Were you just making that shit up?
No, it's true.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Asian Chinese vampires hop. That's their part of their tradition.
Well, that's my ignorance. Thank you, Ross. Thank you for.
But I remember being in a pub once where there was a band had a massive gong, and I waited for the whole set.
Was it Led Zeppelin?
For them to hit the gong at the end.
Moby Dick.
Yeah.
Dick.
But I'm going to say when they fight because the chases, well, the vampires are on the horseback, they are in slow motion, and the other guy's running.
Yes.
That's why they don't catch up with him. But when they do finally catch up with him, he sticks the golden the medallion onto like a Buddhist altar. So that means that they can't get touch it, because when it's on there, they can't touch it. But then two of them on the horseback, two slice downwards with their swords in a horizontal action, which causes from two swords, which causes one single vertical cut on the man's throat. So which I thought was a complete.
There's more of this to come later.
He was complaining about the spitting. Wasn't watching out for
if
that.
Continuity in this film is your biggest gripe, Cleves, you're easily impressed. The golden vampires at this point, I have to explain, look like something out of a really bad episode of Space 1999, don't they?
They look haggard.
They just look like they've got Rice Krispies stuck to a face.
They look
a bit like Alan Partridge when he dresses up as a vampire.
As a zombie.
And he's wearing a shower cape.
Look, it's inconsistent. Amazing. I'm not one of the undead. I'm Alan Partridge. It's supposed to be a flap of skin.
So I have said at this point, who are the undead?
Yeah, because they're not mentioned really.
You're just like, this huge army just comes out of nowhere, armed with, rakes and stuff, and you're just like, who are they meant to be? And the sound mix at this point, I've said, is just unintelligible because I got really annoyed at this point because it is just a jumble of sounds, isn't it? It's like
awesome.
There's no dialogue.
It's quite nightmarish.
And warning, listener, I am going to put on my philosophy/religion and philosophy teacher hat. But what's interesting here is that the undercut of the Dracula mythology is he is in league with Satan in some way, shape, or form, or it's something to do with the devil, and that's why he always recoils at the sight of the cross, which is, of course. So what that is suggesting is that the Christian orthodoxy, the Abrahamic religions, are correct in some way, shape, or form. Yeah. In this film, we see that by placing something on a Buddha, that also stops a vampire.
Yeah.
But then again, Buddhism is an entirely different theological concept. I know I'm thinking about this way too much, but it's like, how comes putting something on Buddha also freaks out a vampire?
Well, I did. Reading Anno Dracula, which I've finished recently, he says that it's just superstition on the vampire's part. Oh. So they're saying, so
it's psychosomatic.
Exactly.
They're freaking themselves out.
Exactly.
Oh, okay, right.
So some of the newer vampires who weren't brought up in a religious background don't have that same thing. But Dracula is still really scared of them because of his own hang-ups.
In a Doctor Who, The Curse of Fenric, it's the person's faith, not the emblem, which keeps the vampire away. So Nicholas Parsons, playing the vicar in that story, has lost his faith in God because of the Second World War, the atrocities of the Second World War.
Yes.
So he becomes the victims to the vampires that break through the balsa wood
hemivores
and polystyrene hemivores. Yes, that's correct.
But it's Ace's faith in the Doctor which saves her, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I can't remember now. I've watched that one for a long time.
Yeah, we were meant to be watching it for this, but then we decided against it.
It's long. It's long.
Okay, so
good. Thank you for answering that,
like this.
people. Thank you. And then so we learned that one of the seven vampires has died as a result of trying to touch his medallion, stop his dry ice leakage problem. And then with that, it comes back to Peter Cushing going, and to this day, it is still believed that somewhere in the massive nature of China, which of course the 1970s audiences, they wouldn't even heard of Chinese provinces. So it's just that somewhere in China, this village still exists. And then, as Ross said earlier, they will just go, not Christopher Lee, Van Helsing, we're off. We're leaving. This is nonsense. And fair enough.
You're a deadbeat man.
Apart from the only man who's wearing different colour clothes, who sits there for a little bit, thinks, but then leaves.
And then climbs out a window at the back. Our Julie Egg, for want of a better name.
Yeah.
Is Julie Egg and the son introduced at this point? As just
in a second, yes.
Yes.
Totally flimsy, throwaway, pointless characters, aren't they?
Yes.
Well, what I put is this is just an interminable setup sequence. There are a couple of scenes which basically just set up the point of the film, featuring the remaining Chinese gentleman who says to Peter Cushing, for all intents, look, this is what you're talking about is from the village where I'm from.
Yeah, but he doesn't say that to him in the university. He waits till the night time.
Yes, that's right.
climbs up a wall.
Ross, I'm doing this for the sake of our listeners. You don't have to go through this. So what you need to learn is, yes, it's for real. And the story you just heard about, that's all legit. Those vampires are still out there. Please come and help me kill these vampires.
Yeah, so what I'm trying to say is, why don't you just say that to him in that room rather than wait till night time and climb through his window?
It's a really bad film.
Yeah. But then we also meet, has Van Helsing got a son in any other Dracula films? Are you aware of? Okay, so this is the...
No. Well, he's got his granddaughter Jessica, isn't he?
Yeah, but it's not... Yeah. Yes.
Exactly. So I was like, oh, okay. Now, if we're going to try and put any kind of like any of them make anything approaching
it's a different Van Helsing, that is, though.
But yes. So
yes,
what we learn is that the Peter Cushing in Dracula AD 1972 is his grandson.
Yeah.
So therefore, the person that we're introduced to here, that must be Leyland.
Leyland must be the father.
Must be his father.
Yes.
And his mum must be Shih.
He didn't look half
But
Chinese.
he does not. But that's right. He produced a son who looks as if he has
I think
no
we can
age.
safely say that this film is non-canonical.
Yes.
Because it doesn't fit into the
I'll take that.
Yes.
So
30 minutes in, there has still been no kung fu in this film, has there? So then there is a bit of a fight. So I have said at this point, it being interspersed with Christmas ads doesn't help.
No.
Because I watched this on YouTube. There's an awful lot of Christmas adverts that make this film even more incoherent than it already is.
Yeah. Often halfway through a sentence, it will cut into a...
Yeah, and then you cut back to Peter Cushing in a pith hat with like a long silk scarf around it, which looks like a woman's hat, which I'm not saying, he shouldn't be wearing a woman's hat, but it looks a bit odd, doesn't it, really?
So, yeah, we... like James said, we meet the other Western characters, which is Van Helsing's son,
Leyland.
This Scandinavian
British Leyland.
We meet the British Leyland and the Scandinavian lady,
Julie Egg.
Yeah, Julie Egg.
Yeah,
who is she's basically traveling around the world on adventures on her dead husband's money.
Yeah,
it's to say these characters are sketched in on the back of a fag packet is to do them a lot of favours, isn't it? She can barely speak English. The guy playing British Leyland is just awful and was probably never seen again. He was probably like the milk tray man or something, wasn't he?
Sons and Daughters.
Oh, is that who's in Sons and Daughters?
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Sons and Daughters.
Okay.
Sons and Daughters. I'm going to find out a little bit about Sons and Daughters first.
So basically, what I assumed was a Chinese crime boss basically says, "Will you come and have sex with me?" to the woman, and the Van Helsing's son sticks up for her, gets a rickshaw home, but then the Chinese boss sends a load of assassins, and then we have our first proper kung fu fight.
And
then the seven brothers turn up, who are super kung fu guys. Have all got different powers. So one of them's got a battle axe. Someone else has got double swords. Someone's
basically
got
basically like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yes, exactly. Leonardo, Donatello, Raphael, and Michelangelo.
Do you want to know about Sons and Daughters?
Yes, please.
Always.
Sadness and happiness, we will find out our sons.
Sons and Daughters is an Australian Logie Award-winning soap opera / drama serial broadcast by the Seven Network between 1982 and 1987, produced by the Reg Grundy organisation that we all know as
Neighbours.
the producer of Neighbours.
And the logo was like the Crystal Dome, wasn't it?
Yes.
Correct.
Forever slowly rolling towards you in a feeling of doom, like Indiana Jones. There's a lot about it. So it was created by television executive Reg Watson, who was also known for his work on Crossroads,
wow,
The Young Doctors, and some other programs that I haven't heard of. He was inspired by the glossy US primetime drama Dallas and the more down-to-earth spin-off Knots Landing.
So it was the Australian version of Dallas.
It was basically the Australian version of Dallas. Sons and Daughters theme tune.
Yeah.
The theme tune was written by partners Peter Pinney and Don Batty and was performed by Mick Layton and Kerry Biddle. The full theme tune was released as a 7-inch single in the UK in 1984 and reached number 68 in the charts and remained in the charts for 3 weeks.
Wow.
That's longer than some people are at number 1, isn't it? We
On
need to
those
find
sales
we need
figures,
to find,
today they'd be number one for a month.
yeah. Cleavey, you need to find this theme tune and put it into
It's already happened.
Oh, jolly good. Okay, carry on. Clark.
Okay, so this is where the worlds collide, basically, of the young Westerners and the Van Helsing. So the chap in white is the older brother, the leader of the Ninja Turtles, and then we got the rest of the team, and they all join up and basically say, well, vampires are over there, but we can't afford to go there because it's really far away.
Miles.
We need loads of
Costs a lot of money.
It's going to cost a lot of money. We need a lot of resources. And the rich Scandinavian lady, again, we are doing really crap with people's names, says, "I will."
Julie Egg.
Julie Egg said, well, "I will fund this if you let me come along." Peter Cushing.
She said, "I fast forward."
Peter Cushing
says, "No, it's too dangerous for a woman."
Yes,
she is warned.
Yeah.
But then quickly capitulated, and then off they go.
And then cut to them in the middle of Hong Kong somewhere, and they are just attacked out of nowhere.
Yes.
No plot, no dialogue whatsoever by people that are bandits. And you can tell that they're bandits because their leader is just, for some reason, wearing a
It's
fedora.
the same man who tried to get the woman before.
Oh,
Is it?
Yes.
Right.
And I put in it, there's a lot of resources and a lot of people die in order for him to get his leg over with that woman. So,
she is quite good looking, though.
Yeah, well, she was, what was it, the new sex symbol of the 1970s, wasn't she?
No, that's
Julie Egg.
Okay, that's Julie Egg.
Yeah.
That's not what he was trying to get, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm confused.
Well, he's not trying to cop off with Peter Cushing.
In his pith helmet.
But yes, cue what I've put down as contractually obligated kung fu sequence as they then all fight.
Someone gets their throat pulled out with 2 fingers at one point.
Yes. I think, does someone get an arrow through them as well?
Yeah, lots of arrows.
Hands.
Yeah.
Lots of arrows.
And I put, it's nice to see what I described as the very 1980s British schoolboy playground move of the double-handed chop.
Yeah, to either side of the neck.
Yeah, that's the one. So, dear listener, if you want to do this, take your hands, place them at a 45-degree angle, and imagine you striking them in a kung fu chop either side of somebody's neck.
Yeah.
That is done at least twice in this film.
Yeah,
which I was like,
get killed by getting slapped.
This, before that goes out, Cleves, you need to put a disclaimer on that. That could be very dangerous.
Yes.
Yes, please, any school kids listening,
Yeah, do not copy any of the moves.
I will have to give you a lunchtime detention if I catch you
It's like an extreme version of Eric Morecambe giving them a slap on the side of the cheeks, isn't it?
Yes, good point.
Right. Do you think playgrounds are still just really rough tarmac?
Yeah, they are, mate.
They are they? So as you fall, you get embedded. Well, I thought your school might have gone up in the world, James.
Oh, Jesus, we're broke. Yeah.
Cushioned rubber or something like that, you know.
No, not really.
So you still get
for the most
grit
part
under the skin. You have to pick out.
Yeah. If you hit the ground hard,
I have witnessed someone being given another boy a tombstone on that surface before.
Whoa!
Yeah.
What happened there, Cleves?
Our school was rough.
It was all very jovial up until that point.
Yeah.
And then it all went all really quiet.
Yeah.
Because the boy who'd just been tombstoned into the concrete stopped moving, and everyone just sort of like walked away quietly.
Oh no!
No one went to get any help with it. They thought, "Fuck, we're going to get done." Oh.
I remember a boy called Mark Bubb falling, splitting his head open on a step, and then teachers coming out and leading everyone away, and it was a bit like he was dead, and we were told to avert our eyes because he couldn't be moved. It's terrifying.
I was waiting outside my daughter's school the other day, and there's some steps coming down from a bit, and one of the teachers fell down those steps.
Nice.
And just screamed and hit the floor. And then she couldn't move. Every time she tried to move, she was screaming with pain. And all the children were just sort of like walking away inside. No one's going to do any help. And I'm thinking, it's behind a gate, which I'd have to get buzzed in to do, so I didn't know what to do. Eventually, a teacher came in. So that would be
worth. And again,
felt like a sack of shit.
James, tell the story of Leg being late for the for the coach.
Right. So that's not the story I was about to tell. This is why listeners listen to love this podcast, right? Isn't it? Right? Forget the 7 golden vampires for a minute. Right. So Ross and I were part of a large coach party that we're heading off to see a production of Macbeth, as we were doing GCSE English and Shakespeare. Sorry, Macbeth was our Shakespeare play of one that had been picked out for us, and we were told that we had to be at the on the coach at let's say 6 o'clock. And as our school was at the end of a very long driveway, and the other side of this driveway was Poole Stadium, which it still is to this day. And at the sort of in between, sort of demarcation point was a long fence and sort of bush area. But at the end of the sort of the driveway and at the end of the fence was a long sort of chain. Did you say, Ross?
Yeah.
That they would uncouple during events at Poole Stadium where they had to get lots of cars out at once. So this chain was always sort of knee height.
I can imagine.
And as the coach is going along the driveway, someone goes, running late. Ross might have to beep her name out.
Yeah.
And here she comes, inevitable.
Oh.
And she's running for the coach, waving for it to be stopped. And she goes to leap the chain and just mistimes it horribly. And I can close my eyes and still see it. That she catches her ankle and bam, face down. Absolute face down on the concrete. Yeah, face plant. She is in just a horrible state. Like, there's blood everywhere.
Yeah. to the cheers of us
compatriots. Teenagers are so lovely. And I can tell you this, as someone has to work with teenagers on a daily basis, they're so lovely. The response to this was not, oh no, Julie, are you all right? It was, from people.
Yeah.
You
and
must
I was
bleep
just
her name
going
out, the poor woman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, still being talked about 5 years later.
On my one, just quickly, I was going to say, is one of my colleagues, she's now retired, she fainted on the stairs at school where I work right now, and I caught her. I had to catch her in full. And yeah. And
how high were these stairs, James?
Oof, it was a proper sort of school staircase, so I'm going to say like 12, 14 stairs. She was on about like stair 8 or 9, and I noticed her going like from left to right. I thought, she
what brought on the faint?
James's hunkiness.
Oh, she fainted. She
fainted at the top of a hat.
She fainted a couple of times.
Yeah.
She fainted a couple of times. I think she was a bit stressed out. Yeah.
I fainted.
Well, I just thought, she's going to go. And so I ran up and caught her. And until the day she retired, she was really super great, but I could do no wrong in her eyes. It's like,
Cleaver's fainted. Let's hear about that.
I just faint if I see my own blood.
Really?
Yeah.
I've known you since 1989 and I don't know that.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Good God.
Yeah.
Wow.
Christ.
Okay.
I hope you never develop psoriasis then. You're passing out every 5 minutes.
Yeah. I don't like having blood taken.
So back to this nonsense film. After the kung fu sequence and after the bandits are thoroughly dealt with and seen off,
murdered,
then we get a squad rundown. That the man who wants Van Helsing to come to his village and rid us of the 7 vampires, he says, "Oh well, here's the squad."
Yeah,
and sort of runs through them all. Although it's no real point because there's no further character to development on any of them.
Like, you might remember their names. And I think that was a little bit sort of patronising towards it.
It's a bit like when Elvis introduces his band or something like that, isn't it? On bass, we got Jimmy
Ronnie Tubbs.
But these are guys who have got like big axes and swords instead, aren't they?
Luckily,
and it's things. It's dialogue like this is Chen Wei. He decided to dedicate his life to the long staff. And then that's it. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
Whilst stereotypically sort of meditating. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's a bit where I can't remember what happens, but all I've written is the edit with the gold bat. So there's a bit where Peter Cushing is talking about a gold bat, and then there's an edit where it jumps out of his hands into a fire or something. But you can see he's still talking on the cut.
Oh, I can't remember that.
And it's like someone edited this film blindfolded with boxing gloves on and literally just like an axe.
There is a bit later on where Peter Cushing just falls into a fire, and it looks like he's actually tripped and falls into the fire.
Right. Well, we'll talk about that fire in a bit because they were
Also
very
at this
happy with that
point-
fire.
Yeah. Also at this point, the sun has totally disappeared. I felt like for about 20 minutes of the film, I didn't see him on screen at all, and I thought they'd left him behind. And then suddenly he just pops up again.
Yeah, in order to perv over the Chinese
And with
lady.
a love interest.
Yeah,
All
and
of a
has
sudden he's like,
weird
oh, he's in love with
snog
her.
with her, doesn't he? Yeah. They have a weird snog, and it's just like, give up.
Yeah, whereas Juliang he falls in love with the head of the Seven Brothers,
Which is quite unorthodox at the time, to be fair.
But,
But
Juliang.
of course, it doesn't end well.
Yeah.
And then, so what I put is 45 minutes in, dire. It's just my note. It's
diarrhea, I'd call it.
They then sort of carry on and they sort of drag through mainland China. And then the head of the Seven Brothers, again, sorry, Carreras name gone. This one is he's like, oh, look, there's these caves up ahead. We should go into these caves, aka the Shaw Brothers set. They go in there. They start, they're like, okay, we'll rest here for the night. There's a little bit kind of more romance development between the two aforementioned couples. And then lo and behold, oh my God, it's a couple of the seven vampires. It's the return of the really bad vampire bats, one of whom you will notice just flies into a wall. I noticed as I was watching it. One of the bats is a boink.
There's I thought it's very basic, but quite a good transformation. But they sort of like, they swoop down and then just pinging.
Bang!
Yeah.
It's not very
That's
good,
right. And then one goes behind a rock pile. Some stalagmites come down. Stalagmites.
Yeah.
One just like disappears and then leaps out from behind the stalagmites. Look,
the production
human form
values
now.
of this film aren't even up with like Chuckle Vision, I don't think.
But they managed to
Or
kill.
like,
They managed to kill 3 Seven Gold vampires at this point really easily. And,
and I put, wake up everybody, Kung Fu.
Yeah.
And then a huge Kung Fu fight breaks out. Some of the zombie armies turn up as well.
Yeah, hopping
And
around.
they're just hopping around. And what I put is there's one scene where the Swedish lady, what's her name again?
Julie Egg.
Julie Egg. It's just, if you look at it, she's just like resting up against the wall, just watching.
Looking
really, and I just put she's really
with heaving
nonplussed.
bosom.
Yeah, she's managed to strip down to a
vest.
camisole at that point, doesn't she?
As this fight is going on, Peter Cushing just shouts, "Strike at their hearts!"
Yeah.
And this is the information. And it's like, thanks, Peter Cushing. He's doing nothing else during
Thank
this
God
time
you're here.
whatsoever. While the
He's
Kung Fu
waving a
guys are-
torch around at times, isn't he?
And as they do strike at their hearts, this kills off both the zombies and the vampires. Because this is the other mad thing about the film, is that in one of the sequences, Peter Cushing gives them the classic, well, here's how you kill a vampire. You know, a stake through the heart. But then he also goes, but also a spear of silver. I'm like, has that ever been...
Well, silver kills vampires, so it's just...
But a spear of silver. So it's like, well, that's an easy way to kill off a vampire, because that's what sees off this lot. Is
but they
various
really
different
easily beat
spears.
them.
And one of them pulls his mask off to die, conveniently. Oh!
Yeah, just to show the kind of crappy, like, piss holes in the snow for eyes that he's got that are just like holes in a very bad rubber mask, and you can see like the normal actor's eyes behind.
They make me think of a film where someone looks into a basket and there's a burnt baby. Is that?
No.
Is that an Omen film? I think it's Omen
I don't
2.
know.
When
You've watched some rubbish, Cleve,
yeah,
so
I think it's Omen 2. There's like an ash baby in a.
You're an Ash baby.
Yeah.
I saw the drummer from Ash the other day.
Oh, okay.
Not in person, in a photo. And remember that we all used to say that he looked a bit like me in college.
I can't remember.
He still looks a little bit like me. But because he's now got long hair and a beard. And I was like, oh, God, he still looks a little bit like me.
At the end of the fight sequence in the cave, the other thing I've just put down here is that Van Helsing Jr. does this, which is the most unrealistic thing. Again, listener, you can do this at your end. If you punch somebody, the whole thing about punching somebody is that you're using the weight of your body. So that your
James is
I'm actually doing a punch right now. I'm doing, right, but what Van Helsing does is that he stood still, face on, and he throws both of his fists forward simultaneously. He does like a double punch,
like a Superman.
Yes,
like Superman flying,
or like Ram Man.
Or like from Master of the Universe. So if you think about that. That is the most impractical and stupid punch in the world. That's up there with William Shatner just diving on the floor and rolling along the floor. I'd be really
intimidated doing any fighting in front of all of these kung fu guys, wouldn't you?
Exactly. Like at least at one point he's got a gun out and he's like trying to shoot him, and you're like, okay, well, fair enough.
Yeah.
But he does this rubbish like double punch, which I'm like, well, just punch him with one thing. That's you're gonna get more weight in. But anyway, and then Van Helsing gives them a rallying speech and says, look, we've just seen off 3 of the 7, but of course
we will fight them in the beaches.
There's
we will
some
fight
of that.
them in something in the streets.
And he's like, we've got to keep going. We've got to keep going now. Let's go and sort them out. And so they get to the village. And again, I feel that this is one of the things that got cut out. There's nobody in this village.
No.
It's just empty. Now, I don't know if the suggestion is that the 7 golden vampires had killed everyone and turned them into their zombie army or what.
Yes.
But it's
that would make sense.
Why?
There's no one here to defend. What you would want is like people shuttering down and locking doors and hiding away. But all they do is sharpen a load of sticks.
Yeah, and dig a trench.
Put in the ground.
And then
they don't do anything.
Nothing with it. Because as soon as they turn up, they just run outside beyond the barricade.
It's at the door. And the 2 remarkable things is they build like a big fire pit. And my God, were they happy with that fire pit.
Yeah, but there's no point because
there are
can jump over it.
numerous scenes of people leaping over the fire pit.
Yeah.
Oh, God. And then also they show them try to fix kind of like the village has like an external wall and entrance sort of doors which have fallen off. And they show them fixing the doors. And what I've put is it looks like a toddler could knock these doors over. They are the most balsa wood creations. And it comes to pass that they just run in. Yeah, they do.
They all get grit in their eyes. Yeah.
It's really weird.
I can't see what's happening because it's blowing a gale.
Yes. So then inevitably what happens is that, again, you're really not missing anything, listener, if you've not watched this film, is that then the remainder of the 7 golden vampires and the zombie army charge the village, cue another huge kung fu punch up. But then there's some really weird stuff that happens. What I've put is that the one guy is fighting one of the 7 golden vampires, basically sort of sacrifices himself. He rolls into the fire pit with him to kill him.
Yeah.
But, and what I put is, in most normal films, this would be a huge moment. Someone choosing to sacrifice it. And it's just like a throwaway moment. It's like, he's dead. He's dead. And there's
one vampire just does a backflip for no reason and then dies. And I can't work out what happened at that point.
Julie Egg gets bitten.
Yeah,
wait for it. Before we get to that point, there's also 2 of them fighting together, one of the vampires. And one of the vampires cuts one of the guy's hands off.
Yeah.
Yes, that's
and
great.
And then the other guy just falls over and dies.
Yes.
And what I put is,
they kind of die in sympathy, don't they?
They're brothers. Their fighting technique is to always be holding hands, isn't it? Those 2 brothers. Where they, they sort of like do a hand holding.
In cutting off his hand, that also kills him. I was like, why does that happen? Why would that be so fatal?
Yeah.
That kills him off anyway. And this, you're quite right,
isn't it?
Julie Egg then gets bitten by one of the vampires. She was warned.
Yeah.
Let's just say she was warned at the start of this expedition.
Yeah, and then her boyfriend...
Keep your clothes on.
Then her boyfriend goes to try and help her.
And kills the vampire. Well, all the people of the village, maybe these are the village people, not the village people, but some of the people from the village sort of turn up and start sort of just, they club the vampire to death once again with farming
literally
tools.
Mush into mush, don't they?
Into mush. Yes. Have that. It's weird. It's all very strange.
Yeah, but then when Julie Egg, she goes to bite her Chinese boyfriend, and he pushes her onto one of... Oh, she does bite him as well.
She successfully bites him. She does.
But he pushes her onto a stake.
And then Van Helsing shouts, "You must destroy her!" You know, she's not human anymore. And so he pushes her onto a big bit of sharpened bamboo and then realizes that he himself has been bitten. The same thing will happen to him. So he then puts himself onto the bamboo too,
that point, I thought.
In a quite weird, dark... And all I put is the lighting at this point. That whole sequence is quite good.
Yeah.
That's one of the feeling. The dark lighting is there. It's quite good.
Yeah.
That's very weird. And I've just put, they were very, very pleased with people jumping over flames in this film. It happens a lot.
Finally, Van Helsing runs off to the house where
Well, it's like a large kind of citadel, isn't it?
Chinese lady who Van Helsing's son has fallen in love with gets abducted and taken back to the pagoda. I think you'll find it. The pagoda, which is very obviously
pagoda, not a citadel.
Or the citadel, whatever you want to call it. Their HQ. She goes to get tied up. Van Helsing's son runs up there, starts fighting the vampire that's taken her up there. And while he's fighting her...
Taken her up there.
Exactly. Van Helsing then turns up, stabs him in the back with a silver spear. Once again, just stabbing people with spears in this film kills them. He falls into the big load of Tizer.
Yeah.
Bubbles away.
And just evaporates in the big load of Tizer. And then he then sort of takes
Dracula turns up.
Wait for it. He takes her out with the other remaining brother, the archer brother who's still alive.
Mother from another brother.
Yeah. And so they're gone, thus leaving Peter Cushing just hanging around. And then with that, it's the last remaining brother who is actually, who is Dracula. And then he's like, I know who you are, Dracula. Are you afraid to face me? And then we get not Big Chris Lee. He transforms back, not on the Rotunda of Doom this time. He doesn't get on the little turntable and transform back like that. He just kind of and says, I'm going to get you, Van Helsing. And then I don't know what you guys thought.
On the spear.
I'm going to get you, Van Helsing.
It's the weakest fight these two characters have ever had.
It is the worst fight scene ever,
He just chases after him, and as Ross says, just trips up and literally just falls onto Van Helsing's spear.
The end.
And as we all know, with Hammer movies, there will be no coda. There will be end.
No.
That is the end of the film.
The end. Roll credits.
Wow.
Exactly.
That was hard going recapping that because there wasn't much to it.
Well, there's no dialogue. There's no story.
Normally we jump over bits, ladies and gents, but on this occasion, you've literally heard how the film is.
Yeah.
Yes. We watched it, so you don't have to.
Yeah.
Dear listener.
And my final note is 90 minutes of my life that I won't get back.
Yeah.
If I get run over by a bus tomorrow, I will be really pissed off.
No, if that's the last film you've ever seen. Oh, mate.
So this is the only time where talking about the film has made me downgrade my score, whereas normally it makes me upgrade my score.
Wow! What was your score?
It was going to be 1, just because of the bit with the zombies coming up, which I thought was quite good. So I am now giving this a 0. I think this is the only film I've ever given a 0. It's just not worth watching. I thought like there might be some charm in like two cultures clashing together, but it's not. It's just the worst of both.
I remember in the 90s that people would go on to me about watching things like A Police Story and things on VHS. So I would go to, on Richmond Road in Cardiff, there was a very good video store, which had a cave effect made of fiberglass, which was full of horror films and world cinema. And then I'd get out, say, Police Story or, X film, go home and watch it. And I'd be like, this is just shit. Like, why do people see this as a cult film? It's just rubbish. Because I saw on YouTube watching it that someone said, this is better than the last 2 Hammer Dracula films, which is AD 1972 and Satanic Rites of Dracula. Whoever wrote that is an imbecile. And they have developmental problems because this film is just...
But say what you really think, John.
It's mediocre. And I can't believe that this had a general release. Yeah. And I think...
Knowing what Christopher Lee would do for money and the fact that he turned this down...
He'd be in it. And I think that it just shows that Hammer at that point really was... they deserve to fail, which I've never really thought before. And maybe that's why I've avoided this film, because they made more money for a long time doing things like the Omnibuses films and the Steptoe films. They made more than the horror films. And when you look at this, you realise why, don't you? Because it is absolutely terrible.
Yeah.
And this isn't the film that I've disliked the most strongly, but this is the worst film we've watched.
Yes. It's definitely the worst.
Oh, easy.
I don't dislike this as much as Hellraiser or The Rats.
The Rats was the worst score thing we've ever done, by the way.
It was.
It's still outperformed every other podcast by 100%. Right. John, what did you give this?
I would give this. What's my worst score?
There we go. That's right.
Is that The Rats?
Yeah.
Probably The Rats or Hellraiser or
It was The Rats. What
was that? The stupid thing we watched with the Action Man in it.
Extra. The
thing we watched with the Action Man in it.
Yeah.
That's all you need to know.
Yeah.
Lou Peel. Yeah, go on.
John, you gave The Rats -10.
I'd say this is -9.5 then.
Okay.
Just to be fair.
Extra, you gave -9. So there we go.
Okay, yeah, fair enough then, yeah.
-9.5. James, what are you going to give this?
Just because of the idea of the Dracula, or they could command zombies in some way, shape, or form, and for, as always, the athleticism of some of the kung fu performers. 0.5.
0.5.
It's getting half.
0.5.
Just for those. 0.5.
Yeah.
So it's not a 1. It's not good. I wouldn't recommend that anybody watch this. It's really not worth it.
No. I wouldn't recommend.
Even as a novelty, it's really not worth watching. But as always,
no, it's not
very
a
much
novelty,
aware
is it?
But it's like people have worked on this. People put some degree. Whereas things like, even Extro, I think, did I give Extro 0? I think that might have been a 0.
If you compare this to something like Deadline.
James, you gave Extra 0, yes.
Yeah. So it's marginally better than Extra.
You've given that the same score as the abominable Dr. Phibes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
same,
I think it's on a par with the unwatchably boring and stupid.
Yeah.
There's something in it. It was like, okay, well, there's a degree of as I said, like in terms of stage, like Phibes was stage design and things such as that, but it's like, no, I can't.
This has nothing to recommend. No.
There's not even Big Chris Lee.
No.
Come on.
No.
So, like Peter Cushing, the only reason you might want to watch this is if your wife died and you needed something to do, you could watch this film.
Oh, dear. Or you're a big fan of Julie Egg.
Yeah. Whatever her name is. So, for something horrific, is there anything which people would like to discuss, which they've read, done, watched,
loads
since we last saw? Oh, James, what have you got for us?
James Randall's got something.
I have. I've got actually several things. So we're good for like the next few podcasts, quite frankly.
Mm-hmm.
But this one I've been meaning. I am. This one I've been meaning to talk about for ages. Is that every time I finish, I go to my bedroom and see the stack of books. And I've totally forgot to talk about that. Over the summer, when I went to Hay-on-Wye, there's an amazing bookshop in Hay-on-Wye called the Cinema Bookshop, which is an old cinema, it's huge, absolutely vast. It's almost like the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark, cavernous. Numerous different secondhand booksellers have sort of taken up in there, and they've just got books on everything. And while I was in there, for a whacking £3, for the purposes of this podcast, I picked up and I felt it was calling to me. There's only like 3 books on this shelf. And one of them was The Psychic Adventures of Derek.
It may well have been calling you.
It may well have been calling me. And of course, Derek, as we've mentioned before, we're all of us to varying degrees are strangely either obsessed or entertained by Most Haunted.
Yeah.
And the late 90s, early noughties, Yvette Fielding, UK Living it was the satellite TV channel featuring them do basically fake ghosts.
Which was ironic considering it was about
fake.
Derek was the mainstay of the show for its early success.
He left, basically.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And so this book is basically him talking about his psychic adventures. And there's of course, there's jewels on every page. And I just thought, bear in mind what some of our interests are. I thought I'd share with you and our listener tonight the subchapter Jack the Ripper. The East End of London in the late 19th century was one of the most disreputable areas of the city, and the Whitechapel district was witness to a series of horrible murders. It was to be the job of the ISPR team to uncover the identity of the murderer, who was known only as Jack. Donald Rumbelow, historian and Ripper expert, was invited to join the team on the investigation. Although Jack the Ripper had been credited with the murder of 6 women at different locations, credited is an inverted commas, we would be visiting just 2 of those sites. It would be Donald's job to authenticate any information the team members might use. The first place the team was taken to was Mitre Square. Today, this is a pleasant flagged area where people may sit and enjoy a sandwich during a summer lunch break. They may. Although one side of the square runs a schoolyard in which children play. However, the cheery sounds of a lunchtime game of football faded as I concentrated on opening myself up to the energies, the infamous events taking place a century earlier.
That's what you told the police he was doing outside the playground.
I allowed myself to drift back in time. The April sunshine disappeared as the square darkened and it became nighttime. It was quiet, although I could hear some shouting and merriment coming from a nearby hostelry. A woman's raucous laughter echoed out of the darkness. The name Catherine came into my mind and could come into the mind of any human being who had ever even read anything to do with Jack the Ripper, ever. No, it doesn't say that, sir. Clairvoyantly, I could see a woman dressed in dark, shabby clothing. Wisps of greying hair. This is amazing. Wisps of greying hair could be seen straying from underneath a greasy bonnet. She had the raddled features of someone who is no stranger to drink, just like Derek himself, who I always said.
Del knows a lot about that.
As I always said, he always looked like he just got out of a hot bath whenever you see any piece of it. I knew that she was the victim of the infamous Jack the Ripper, and Catherine was her name. As I allowed myself to come forward to the present, I noticed a bench not 6 feet away from me. I walked over and touched it. This is the spot! I shouted to Dr. Muntz. This is where Catherine's life was taken from her. Although the bench had been placed in the square at a much later date, I was able to use it to pick up the residual energies of the woman's dying moments. I could feel the dread and heart-stopping fear she'd experienced. I was overcome by the stench of blood and something which I could not describe, which was horrible, offensive. I could also tell Dr. Muntz that Catherine had not been the first of the victims of this wild creature's victim. But by the time he met her, Jack the Ripper was a serial killer. And then as I stood contemplating the spot, I became of another name. Lily! Elizabeth! I said, she was a victim too. There were 2 killings on the same night. Which, once again, if you've read anything to do with Jack the Ripper, you would just know.
Well, if you've been on the Jack the Ripper tour, which you probably had.
Tour, you will know this.
Yeah.
And then go on a couple more pages where he talks about this sort of nonsense. And then it says, Dr. Montz, who was with him, can you describe the person responsible for the murders? Dr. Montz asked me. I feel that there were 2 people responsible. I said,
2?
I felt that this was a copycat murder. The man responsible for most of the murders is tall and slim, not heavyset at all, in his 30s. He has strong crease marks down the side of his face with high cheekbones. He has dark hair with touches of grey to the sides, and he definitely has facial hair. He carries a pocket watch and seems to be constantly conscious of the time. He certainly isn't a poor working man. The person I'm talking about is used to mixing with the aristocracy, and I feel he could have some connection with royalty. And a name? Questioned Dr. Muntz. Sadly, no. On this occasion, I was not being impressed with the name of the man who became known as Jack the Ripper. So there you go. That whole Jack is basically him saying, I can't remember the name from the book I read. He said. I could see a man who had facial hair. Well, that narrows him down in Victorian Britain. And he's slim. He's in his 30s. Like, what percentage of Victorian men? Oh, brilliant. Cheers, Derek. So there's a whole book of that, quite frankly.
I did feel like you maybe were channeling
I remember.
Yeah, I felt like
sometimes I feel that
I was in contact with him.
Yeah.
Derek. No, that is him. He's Dell, isn't he? Sammy. Is Native American spirit.
Yeah, well, who's probably now looking for a new host, isn't he?
Well,
yeah,
I'm approachable.
Yeah.
I'm approachable to appear on UK Living and grab Yvette Fielding and just shout in her face.
Yeah.
Or
Mary loves
John's exactly. Or John's particular favourite, Zach Bagan. They like English people, don't they? Things like I can pretend that I'm getting the signals. Get away from here, you goddamn butts. What's just happened to me? Oh, I'm so busy. Oh, guys, did something happen to me?
It's coming. It's in the tree.
I did see that Zach Bagans tweeted the other day that one of his British friends, who I think was called Lady Serpent, had recently passed away.
Oh, very sad.
Which was very sad. She's in the absolutely classic episode where they go to the... I think it's called the Old Ram Inn in Gloucester. And they meet a guy in
Fred
there.
used to ram it in up there as well, doesn't he?
Cut that out. They meet an old guy in there who's got like mad curly ginger hair and he's wearing like a biker jacket and he sleeps on a couch, basically. It's an amazing episode. And then this woman comes in who's called something Serpent. Carry on and I'll find her name.
Ross, have you had anything horrific this month?
Oh, something. I would say I finished reading Anno Dracula, and it gets much better as I read it through.
Okay,
I still think there's a huge amount of references which I wasn't guessing. From reading it, and I didn't realise it had a huge sort of glossary and sort of additional notes and all that kind of stuff at the end. So
yeah,
I was about, I would say, 4/5 into the book, and it ended. And it was
like so many Hammer films.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I've got all this stuff afterwards, and I haven't got around to reading any of that stuff. But it was worth reading, and it gets really good at the end. Although, yeah, it is just a book of Victorian cameos. John Merrick turns up at one point and says,
of course, yes.
Yeah. But it was enjoyable, and I probably will read the sequels at some point. Yeah. John, you got anything to share with us?
Well, I'm just trying to find the lady's name that passed away. And it's just lots of people tweeting about Zach Bagans has got 1 million followers.
Jeez.
I think we should try and get a retweet from Zach Bagans about the podcast.
Before Twitter explodes and dies.
Yeah. I'm saddened to hear that Wendy Binks, a.k.a. Lady Snake, has passed. She did unforgettable investigation rituals ceremonies with us on GA since we first started, and she was always so incredibly kind. R.I.P. Lady Snake.
This episode of German Witchfinders is dedicated to Lady Snake.
And then there's a picture of her with Zach and Aaron.
Very nice.
So she's British. She was British. So, and she's in some great episodes. One where they go into the Hellfire tunnels as well, somewhere in Ireland, the Hellfire Club. And there's some weird shit going down there. But the main one is is it the Ancient Ram Inn in Gloucester? The Ancient Ram Inn.
Yeah.
I think everyone should try and watch that episode if they can, because it's like...
We can always watch it.
Yeah, we should try and watch that one. It's like Zach Bagans and the team, and then it's a load of people with Gloucestershire accents who obviously just think they're American idiots.
If it is based in England, we could legitimately watch it as part of our...
That's an excellent point, Cleves. I think we should watch that.
Yeah, well, maybe we can do that. That could be our New Year special.
Yeah, New Year special.
We can ring in the New Year with that.
I've been reading... My something horrific is that I've been reading the short stories of Susan Hill, who is the writer of TV and films The Lady in Black.
Woman in Black? Yes.
The Woman in Black. Very good short stories, actually, and I would recommend them. I believe that at some point we're going to try and do The Woman in Black, Cleves. Is that correct?
Yeah, I wanted to do I wanted to do the Daniel Radcliffe one. You wanted to do the ITV one. So
yes, the one that really freaks
I think we should try and compare and compass.
Yes.
Compare.
Susan Hill.
Susan Hill, yeah. And I've also been reading some Charles Dickens ghost stories, which are very good.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I just read short stories really. So that's all I've got this week.
Next time will be either just before or just after Christmas. So I'm suggesting we do another BBC Ghost Stories for Christmas. Are you guys up for that?
Okay. Yeah.
So we could watch, I thought, because we did 2 last time and it worked quite nicely because they're quite short. So Whistle and I come with you. Not come with you.
I'll come with you. Wow.
Whistle and I will come to you.
Film.
The original one, not the John Hurt one.
Yes.
Which that's the one John watched by mistake last time. So
Michael Horden. I'll rewatch it again.
And Stigma, which is the one you've talked about lots of times on this podcast, John.
Yes.
So I thought we should watch that one, which is one.
I'd say that they're the first and last canonical ones for that thread, because the Ice House is after Stigma. The Ice House is really very poor.
So I was very lucky to find to get the box set of this in a charity shop recently. So it's good to actually watch it on good quality. So,
yes,
without
the Michael Horden
ads.
one is superb.
Okay.
Yeah, without Christmas ads.
Okay, brilliant. So next time we'll be doing BBC Ghost Stories for Christmas with Whistle I will come to you and Stigma.
Brilliant.
Okay, until next time.
Thank you for listening,
Thank you
everyone.
very much. Thank you for
Both
enjoying
of you.
this podcast about one of the worst films we've ever seen. And we'll see you next time.
Stay
safe, everyone.
Happy day.
Bye.
You have been listening to The General Witchfinders. Support the show and continue the conversation at patreon.com/General Witchfinders. Subscribe and spread the word at generalwitchfinders.com. Farewell, and don't have nightmares.
Can you take the bit out where I talk about pulling off a bat,
Yes,
please?
I will do. It'd be quite hard to pull a bat off, wouldn't it? Maybe that's what started COVID.
Lost deep within the soul of all mankind, there is a hidden cauldron of terror. Fed by the flames of madness. From this steaming devil's brew come the awesome tales and horror legends that live in our worst nightmares and haunt us through the hours of darkness. Vilest of these, and more grotesque than any spectre of our imagination, are the stories of the eternally damned creatures of the night who stalk the shadows in a perpetual and desperate search for human blood. Beware, then, the rustle of bats' wings. Beware the tortured scream that comes from nowhere. Beware the black cloud that covers a clear moon